A good man's footsteps. How far the caravan moved that first day, we do not know, but probably it wasn't more than a few miles, with all the stops that had to be made for feeding the animals and the children, and looking after their many needs. And so it was day after day, just a few more miles, and a few more miles. What faith Abraham needed to keep the vision of the beautiful city bright and shining in his heart all that long, long time. At last, they came to a place called Haran. It may have been named after Lot's father, and perhaps some of his relatives lived there. In any case, Abraham decided to stop a while and give everybody a rest. There were many things that had to be done for so large a company. Then, too, old Father Terah wasn't feeling well, so they camped at Haran and stayed there until Terah died. While at Haran, the caravan grew larger and larger. Lots of calves, kids, lambs, and baby camels were born. More boys and girls arrived to swell the families of the servants. So, by the time Abraham was ready to leave, his moving problems had increased greatly. Then a number of people living in and around Haran asked if they could go along too. They had heard Abraham tell of the great God of heaven, whom he loved and worshipped, and who had called him to leave Ur of the Chaldees and journey to a new and better land. As they had listened to his wonderful story and watched his godly life, they had decided to join him, and Abraham agreed to take them with him. So we read that when the caravan was about to move again, on Abraham's 75th birthday, Abram took Sarah his wife and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. It would have been far easier and more comfortable to have stayed in Haran, where everybody had been so friendly, but this, Abraham knew, would not be doing the will of God. He must go on, ever seeking the land of promise. Now the journey was slower than ever, with so many more people and cattle in the party. They made only a short distance each day, but it didn't really matter, for nobody was in a hurry. They took their time and enjoyed the trip. As they moved southward, the scenery became more and more beautiful. Now and then they passed small settlements of people, descendants of pioneers who had moved from Babel 2 centuries before. They found them to be distant cousins, being children of Canaan, a son of Ham, hence the name, the land of Canaan, for the country we now call Palestine. Sad to say, most of these people had forgotten God and were worshipping idols or bowing down to the sun or moon as though they were gods. They looked with astonishment at this caravan of people who carried no idols and whose kindly, noble-looking leader was forever talking of one who made heaven and earth and who wanted everybody to love and serve him. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. And the Lord appeared unto Abram, and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord, who appeared unto him. Many months had passed since he had set forth from Ur, and you can imagine how glad Abraham was to hear God's voice again. Now and then, during all the long journey and the many delays, he may well have wondered whether he was on the right way, and doing what God really wanted him to do. But now he knew how happy he was that God was pleased with him. In his joy, he built an altar and offered a sacrifice, while he, Sarah, and Lot, and all the servants knelt in worship. As the smoke of the sacrifice rose high in the air, some of the Canaanites saw it and wondered what was happening. As they came to find out, and saw Abraham and all his company on their knees before God, their hearts were touched. They remembered what their fathers had told them of the great Creator, and some decided that they too would like to worship him as Abraham did, instead of bowing down to idols. The first thing Abraham did wherever he pitched camp was to build an altar. Then he and his household would reverently worship God, while the heathen looked on in wonder. Wherever the great caravan paused, Abraham built an altar until the land was dotted with them, each a silent witness to his faith. When, years later, strangers found one of them and asked what it was and who had built it, there was always somebody to say, "This is one of the altars of Abraham, servant of the God of heaven." These altars marked the footsteps of a good man, a man of God, who was seeking to do right and witness for his Maker. We should do as he did. As we move from place to place through life, we should try to leave behind us memorials to our faith. Long after we have gone from one classroom to another, or from one school to another, or from one city to another, people should be able to remember us as children of God, who always stood for right and truth and fair play. Not that we should be a perfect example all the time. Even Abraham, while he was building his altars, made one big mistake, and the Bible tells us about it so that we won't be discouraged if we should slip sometime. Going on still toward the south, Abraham led his caravan all the way to Egypt, and there he tried to deceive Pharaoh. Because Sarah was so very beautiful, he was afraid the king would kill him and take Sarah for himself. So he said that she was his sister. In a way, this was true, but how much better it would have been if from the start he had said she was his wife. Pharaoh at first treated him royally and gave him many presents, but at last, as always, the truth came out. Then Pharaoh was angry, as he had reason to be, and Abraham was very much ashamed. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had. In disgrace, the caravan turned northward again. But though Abraham was heartsick at his failure, he knew where to go. And he went on his journeys from the south, even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar, which he had made there at the first. And there Abram called on the name of the Lord. He had much to say to God. Oh, how he regretted that he had spoiled the best opportunity of his life to witness for him in Pharaoh's court. But God forgave him, and all was well again. It is a good thing when we make a mistake to go back to some altar we built in the beginning, to some place where we met God before, and there pour out our hearts to him in humble repentance. For he will hear us and forgive us, and we shall go on our way again, knowing he loves us still.